That woman destroyed my family. To get back at her, I deliberately set out to get close to her brother. I moved into his home, tried every trick in the book, yet he remained composed and utterly unmoved. Feeling deeply frustrated, I couldn't help but lash out with sarcasm. But much later, I was in tears. I was so young back then, I didn't know any better. His tone was deliberate, but his eyes held a predatory gleam. Even a young girl who says the wrong things should face some consequences. To smoothly get close to Zane, I even orchestrated an elaborate scene. At the dimly lit entrance of a bar, I collapsed in front of his car, my pale neck and arms covered in bruises, just before the two cursing men chasing me could catch up. I looked pitifully at the man in the car and pleaded for help. Please, take me home. The bright headlights shone on me. I instinctively closed my eyes, and the next second, I heard the man's cold voice. Get in. I lowered my head, and as my long hair fell to cover my cheeks, I quickly curled the corner of my lips before opening the car door and settling into the passenger seat. He glanced sideways at me, his expression indifferent. Shall I call the police for you? No. I hugged my shoulders, curling up in the leather seat, my voice trembling. I'm afraid they'll come after me after they're released. His fair, slender fingers lightly tapped the steering wheel, a sign of impatience. Your address. I'll take you home. My sobbing hitched slightly. My parents are dead. I have no home. I looked at him cautiously. Uncle, could I stay at your place for just one night? He was silent for a moment, then nodded faintly. Seatbelt, fasten it. On the way to Zane's flat, I leaned against the window, stealing glances at him from the corner of my eye. His features were already sharp, and now, under the ambiguous light from the car roof, the lines of his profile seemed even more fluid. The slightly long corners of his eyes always tilted upwards, making him look gentle and passionate. Yet when he focused, he appeared cold and aloof. I stared at him, momentarily lost in thought. The first time I saw this face was at his sister Iris's birthday banquet. Iris was a woman poised to become my stepmother after usurping my mother's place. Her 5-year-old daughter, Luna, is my half-sister. I lied to Zane my mom passed away from illness, but my dad is still alive and well. Not only that, he wants to formally marry Iris, the other woman, to legitimize their love, which defies secular conventions. That night, my dad, after smoking half a cigarette, started playing the emotional card with me. Stella, your mom's been gone for 2 years. Dad is getting older. I need companionship and care. I looked at him expressionlessly, curling my lip. Mom's only been gone 2 years and Luna is already over 5? Caught out, his pride wounded, he stood up abruptly, pointing his finger at me and yelling, you eat my food, wear my clothes. Who do you think is in charge of this family? In my dad's eyes, he, Iris, and Luna were the loving family. I was just an outsider. Last month, for Iris's birthday, my dad completely ignored my existence and threw a lavish party for her at a hotel. When I disguised myself and sneaked in, I saw my dad and Iris, each holding a glass of wine, fawning over a man in front of them. The man was exceptionally good-looking, tall and handsome. The well-tailored suit he wore accentuated his outstanding demeanor. As he spoke, his gaze inadvertently swept past me for a second, sharp and penetrating. At first, I thought he was one of my dad's major clients, until the man walked out of the private room with a detached expression, and Iris chased after him from their conversation. I learned that he was actually Iris's biological younger brother, 6 years her junior, named Zane. Zane, Iris shrieked, clearly angered by something he said. I am her sister. The man, who had been walking away, stopped and turned his head, a trace of mockery breaking through his sharp eyes. Sister, are you worthy? As he walked towards the entrance, I pulled the brim of my baseball cap down low, deliberately brushing past him. Sorry, a cold. A aloof voice sounded by my ear. I turned my head and caught sight of a small mole beside his Adam's apple, a touch of sensuality against his cool, fair skin. Desire and a thirst for revenge surged within me simultaneously. It was at that moment I suddenly made up my mind. Not receiving a response from me, Zane didn't seem to mind and continued walking out the door. The moment he stepped out, I pushed open the door to the private room, strode in, and, under the stunned gazes of my dad and Iris, swept all the dishes and plates off the table onto the floor. Stella, amidst the mess, my dad charged towards me in a rage, his hand raised to hit me. I took a big step back, nimbly dodging. He tried to come at me again, but was held back by relatives nearby, left to roar on the spot. Get out of here, get out of this house. I held the door handle, looked at him, and curled my lips. This is only the beginning, and you're already this angry. Don't worry, there's a big gift coming. For you later, just wait. We're here. Zane's consistently cool voice yanked me abruptly out of my memories. I quickly adjusted my expression, maintaining my pitiful demeanor, and followed him out of the car. The elevator ascended directly to the 32nd floor, the penthouse. His home was a spacious, open-plan flat with very simple decor. I sat on the sophisticated gray sofa and watched Zane enter a room. Moments later, he came out carrying a first aid kit and knelt before me. That fall in front of his car had been hard. My knees were scraped, bleeding, and even had grit embedded in them. Ouch, I whimpered. It hurts. Bear with it a little. He said this, then used tweezers to carefully remove the grit from the wounds, disinfected them with iodine, and applied medication. As he did all this, his movements were gentle, his expression focused. His long eyelashes cast dense shadows that softened the usual cold hardness of his features, making him appear even more captivating. I found myself asking, almost against my will, "Uncle, have you done this for someone else before?" He looked up at me, then put away the first aid kit. "You're the only one." My mood suddenly lifted a little. I looked up at him, blinking. "I'm honored, but uncle, where should I sleep later?" "With you." Zane completely ignored my flirtation, his expression unchanged as he led me to the guest room next to the study. "You'll stay here tonight. If you need anything, come find me. But remember to knock first." He turned to leave, but I called out to stop him. "I haven't asked, uncle. What's your name?" He leaned against the wall, looking down at me slightly. "Zane." I already knew his name, of course, but hearing it spoken in his pleasant voice seemed to give it a different significance. I curved my lips into a smile, suddenly took a step forward, my nose almost bumping into his chest. "Zane, remember my name too." I looked directly at him. "I'm Jawud." I stayed at Zane's house for 3 days. At first, he wanted me to leave the next day. I hugged my injured knees, managed to squeeze out a couple of pitiful tears, and spun an entire tragic backstory for myself. Orphaned, family property seized, worked my way through university, ostracized and bullied by roommates. Zane listened to my fabricated story in silence, his dark eyes fixed on me as if they could see right through everything. I felt a bit guilty under his gaze, involuntarily lowered my head, avoided his eyes, and my voice grew softer and softer. After a long silence, he finally stood up and said calmly, "Since that's the case, you can stay a few more days." He even gave me a spare key for convenience when going out for meals during the day. During this time, while he was at work, I went back to my university dormitory once, gathered some of my things and brought them to Zane's place. As I was leaving, my roommate casually asked, "Are you going back home to stay these couple of days?" Home? Did I still have a home? I curled my lip in a mocking smile. "No, I'm staying at my uncle's place for a while." One evening, Zane was working in the study. I pretended to bring him water, pushed the door open, but after just a steps, my feet slipped, I fell to the floor and the glass in my hand shattered. Ouch! Amidst my soft cries of pain, Zane immediately stood up, strode over to me, and asked, "Are you alright?" "It hurts." I looked at him with teary eyes. "It really hurts. I can't get up." Zane sighed, then bent down, reached out, and simply picked me up in his arms. "How can you fall like this just walking? No wonder you're Kalja." He walked to the bed and set me down. "You don't need to bring me things like this in the future. I can manage myself." Just as he was about to straighten up and leave, I wrapped my arms around his neck and looked at him with a suggestive gaze. Zane clearly understood my hint, but refused without hesitation. "Little girl, don't think about such things. I let you stay at my place not for this." But that was precisely why I was here. I had even purposely changed into a flimsy dress and dabbed perfume behind my ears before coming in, fully prepared. I persistently moved closer, almost pressing against his ear. "I'm not a little girl, Zane. I've been an adult for a long time." "Ja?" He admonished me, and the look in his eyes gradually took on a layer of detached coldness. The atmosphere stiffened momentarily. Being rejected after offering myself up was embarrassing. Just as I was about to say something, the doorbell suddenly rang from outside. Zane regained his usual composure, glanced at me, and said calmly, "Let go." He seemed angry. I obediently released my hands, watching helplessly as he walked out, closing the study door behind him. Then the front door opened and his icy voice came through. "What are you doing here?" I hurriedly ran over barefoot and peered through the crack in the door to see Iris' familiar face. "Why are you so nervous? Did you bring someone home?" Her eyes swept in my direction. I instinctively took a step back, but my ankle bumped into a potted plant behind me, making a slight noise. Iris' expression stiffened. "You really brought someone home?" As she started walking towards me, I felt a moment of panic and was about to find a place to hide when Zane reached out and stopped her. "I've got a little cat." He looked back towards the slightly ajar study door. "A stray, just arrived, still very shy though." Hearing this, Iris lost interest in the matter and changed the subject. "Zane, you have to help me this time if your brother-in-law's company can't get through this cash flow problem. It'll be me and your niece who suffer." "My dad's company." I leaned closer, wanting to hear more clearly. "Brother-in-law?" A note of sarcasm entered Zane's usually cool voice. "Iris, I don't think you grasped the reality yet." He was very tall, with a tall and straight posture. The smooth, well-defined muscle lines under his soft loungewear made him look nothing like a man nearing 30. Now, looking down at Iris, his expression was faint, but he carried a sharp, imposing aura. "Zane, no matter what happened before, I am still your sister, and Luna is your niece," Iris spoke. Then suddenly reached out, grabbed his sleeve, and said pitifully, "Help me, please?" Her actions and gaze were filled with an ambiguity that didn't seem appropriate between siblings. My heart skipped a beat. I continued watching through the crack and saw Zane glance at his watch before issuing an eviction notice. "1 minute, if you're not gone by then, I'll have security escort you out." After Iris left, I pushed the door open and came out, staring at Zane by the wall. He turned to look at me, and before I could speak, he said calmly, "Your leg better now?" I froze, belatedly remembering that just 10 minutes ago, I had been performing the act of being unable to stand after my slip. I tried to explain, but Zane had no intention of listening. "Since your leg doesn't hurt anymore, go back to your room. I still have some work to finish." With that, he walked towards the study. The moment he passed by me, I mustered my courage, grabbed his wrist, looked up at him, and asked, "Who was that?" "What? The person who came to see you just now, was that your sister?" Zane glanced at me sideways, a dark, unreadable emotion spreading in his pupils. I couldn't figure out what he was thinking, only hearing his aloof voice say, "You could say that." The skin of his wrist against my fingertips was warm, and I could almost feel his pulse. I couldn't help but gently stroke it a couple of times, looking up to see a faint blush sweep across his ears. Then he abruptly pulled his hand back. Zane's voice held a warning tone. "You're still a young girl, don't think about such things all the time." I blinked, looking at him innocently. What was I thinking? "Uncle, it was just an accidental touch, don't misunderstand me." Zane looked at me, and after a long moment, the corner of his mouth suddenly lifted. He leaned down, bringing his face close to mine. I was both nervous and expectant, instinctively closing my eyes. But his presence stopped extremely close to me, so near I could feel it. Yet he refused to go any further. I slowly opened my eyes, meeting Zane's beautiful eyes with their slightly upturned corners. A hint of amusement flickered in his eyes as he asked me slowly, "Were you expecting something?" In that instant, I felt both ashamed and angry. Without thinking, I leaned forward and kissed him. A faint, cool minty scent reached me. We separated after just a second. I took a quick step back, trying to look composed as I stared at him. I was indeed expecting it, so I took the initiative myself. After saying that, without waiting for his response, I turned and ran back to the guest room. After locking the door, my back pressed against the door panel. In the quiet, I could almost clearly hear my own rapid heartbeat, and my cheeks were burning. That night, I didn't sleep well because I dreamed of that fleeting kiss. The next day, I walked out with dark circles under my eyes, only to find Zane also had faint dark shadows under his. I glanced at him and tentatively asked, "Zane, didn't you sleep well last night?" I was working late last night and went to bed late." He responded indifferently, placing the fried buttered bread slices on the plate in front of me. "Have breakfast. After you eat, I'll drive you to university." Zane drove me to the south gate of the university before heading to his own company. But before leaving, he instructed me, "Call me after class. If I don't answer, take a taxi back first." I obediently agreed, watching his car turn and leave until it completely disappeared from my sight. Then I turned and headed to class. Since we were only freshers, few dared to skip class, so the classroom was packed. Luckily, my roommate had saved me a seat. I sat down next to her, took out my textbook and phone from my bag, and inadvertently noticed a new message. From my dad, "Stella, are you free to come home today? Dad has something he'd like to discuss with you." He hadn't spoken to me in such a gentle and affectionate tone since my mom passed away. Seeing this message, I felt a momentary sense of disorientation, as if time had slipped. When I came back to my senses, I suddenly remembered what Iris had said to Zane last night. Understanding gradually dawned on me. I stared at my phone, sneered coldly, and threw it back into my bag. Probably because I didn't reply, my dad called just as I entered the canteen at noon. I said coldly, "What is it?" The man who had been roaring, "Get out of my house." A month ago now spoke to me softly and gently over the phone. "Stella, Dad misses you. Come home for dinner after your classes today. I'll have Iris make your favorite dishes." I found it both ironic and amusing, but I agreed to go back on the way. Zane sent me a message, "Class over." I held my phone and looked at it for a long time without replying. He sent another message, a phone number. "Call this number after class. I'll have someone pick you up." Iris had made a table full of dishes, few of which were actually my favorites. My dad served me a spoonful of spare rib soup into my bowl, smiling ingratiatingly. "Stella, have some soup to nourish yourself. You've lost weight." I lowered my eyes, a slight smile playing on my lips, then suddenly dropped the spoon into the bowl and leaned back in my chair. "I'm allergic to peanuts, Dad. If you want to kill me for the money, you can just say so." He stiffened, the smile on his lips barely holding on. "Stella, is that any way to talk to your dad?" Iris fanned the flames, saying softly from the side, "Stella, your mom and dad don't blame you for what happened at the hotel last time." "Mom and dad? My mom died a long time ago, and it was you two who drove her to her grave." I tilted my head and smiled at her. "What? Iris, are you eager to join her underground?" Iris's smile instantly vanished. My dad couldn't stand me targeting her, frowning. He waved his hand dismissively. "Stella, let me get to the point. Before your mom passed, didn't she transfer the title of that city center flat to your name? And all those jewels and gold she left for you, hand them over. Dad needs them urgently." So it was about the money. I lifted my eyelids and said indifferently, "No." "Stella," his tone immediately hardened. "The family company is in trouble now and needs that capital. It's a result of over a decade of your mom's and my hard work. How can you bear to watch it go down the drain?" I stared at him in disbelief, nearly laughing out loud, but my mom was lying in the hospital bed. "And you brought Iris there?" saying you'd hand over all the family assets to Iris to manage from then on. I was in the room. I was in the bathroom. I looked at his suddenly pale face, my smile fading as I stood up, looking down at him. Gene, when you brought that woman to provoke my mom, did you ever think about your over a decade of hard work, your 20-year marriage? Before I could finish speaking, a stream of scalding hot liquid splashed onto my chest. Thought it was Luna, sitting across from me. After splashing the spare rib soup from her bowl, she glared at me viciously. Don't you dare insult my mom. That face, not yet fully mature, didn't resemble my dad at all but had some of Iris's features. I looked at her for a few seconds, then suddenly raised my hand and slapped her across the face. Luna! Iris stood up abruptly. Amid Luna's heart-wrenching wails, my dad also stood up and without a second thought, slapped me back. He used so much force that my head snapped to the side. Half my face went numb, and my ears rang. Stella, your sister is only 5 years old. I pressed my tongue against the soft, painfully throbbing flesh inside my cheek, then turned to look at him, enunciating each word clearly. Gene, I'm only 19. From the mirror on the dining room wall, I saw my reflection, my clothes stained and messy from the soup, my hair disheveled, half my face swollen. I looked utterly wretched, like a pitiful creature. Gene's eyes flickered. Gene, forget about the money. I'd rather die than give it to you. I turned and walked away without looking back. By the time I left, it was already dark. With my injured face, I wandered aimlessly through the streets, then bought a few cans of beer from a 24-hour convenience store and sat down at a table outside. I drank while lost in thoughts of the past, until my phone vibrating on the table snapped me out of it. It was Zane calling. I didn't answer, just watched it ring persistently for a full minute before the screen went dark and then lit up again. Send her your location. I'll come pick you up. I picked up my phone, sent in the pin, but regretted it a few seconds later and quickly withdrew the message. Don't worry about me. I typed back. I'm staying in the dorm tonight. I hadn't actually planned to go back to the dorm. Showing up with a face like this, I could already imagine the speculation and gossip. But I had no desire for anyone's pity. I sat on the edge of a flower bed, under the light from the convenience store window, drinking can after can of beer. Halfway through, a light rain began to fall. Feeling dizzy, I stood up, then sat back down, grabbed my phone, and prepared to book a taxi to a nearby hotel for the night. The next second, a familiar, cool male voice sounded above my head. He didn't use my formal name. I lifted my drunken, bleary eyes and saw Zane standing just a step away, holding an umbrella. The rain curtain was blurred by the dim yellow streetlights. He stood there, his posture sharp and distinct, looking down at me slightly. Propping my chin up, I looked up at him and smiled. Zane, what are you doing here? I must have been drunk, because otherwise, how could I see a deep, heavy look of pity rising in his usually cold eyes? Soft, warm fingertips gently brushed over my swollen cheek. Amid the pattering rain, Zane's voice was exceptionally gentle. Let's go home first. The umbrella provided by the convenience store could only block a small part of the rain. I was almost completely drenched. Staggering to my feet, I was about to follow Zane when he suddenly stopped, closed the umbrella, and tossed it onto a nearby table. Before I could react, he turned, bent down, and picked me up. My body went light, instinctively. I wrapped my arms around his neck. The next second, I heard his low voice. Clearly can't hold your liquor, yet you drink so much. A reprimand laced with helplessness and tenderness. No one had spoken to me in that tone since my mom passed away. My nose suddenly stung, and I couldn't help but bury my face in his chest, sobbing and calling out, "Mom!" The cold rain poured down. Zane's body stiffened slightly, but he didn't say anything, just carried me to the car. The car interior was warm, and besides that, a faint scent of grapefruit lingered around me. Zane leaned over, fastened my seatbelt, then reached out and patiently smoothed back my rain-soaked, messy hair stuck to my cheeks, tucking it behind my ears. As he did all this, his touch was gentle, his expression focused. Those deep, sea-like eyes were so close. The alcohol rose within me. As if bewitched, I suddenly leaned forward and kissed the corner of his lips. Finding it not enough, I even darted my tongue out to lick them. Zane's movements froze instantly. It took him a long moment to say, "You're drunk, Zane. Why did you come looking for me?" I tilted my head, my gaze blurry as I looked at him. I already said I was staying in the dorm. He started the car and while driving said, "Don't be so stubborn, you're still a young girl. It's okay to be a bit willful, no one will blame you." His tone was calm, only letting slip a hint of tenderness in the pauses between words. Yet it easily shattered my defenses, covering my still throbbing cheek. I burst into tears, Mum, probably due to the combination of alcohol and getting caught in the rain. By the end of my crying fit, my mind grew increasingly foggy, and I felt utterly drained. When the car stopped downstairs, Zane carried me out and took me all the way home. He ran a hot bath and then helped me into the tub, enveloped in them. Warmth, a comforting comfort washed over me. In my daze, I started taking off my clothes, but then a warm hand reached over and stopped mine. I looked up and saw Zane's face, blurred by the steam yet still strikingly handsome, filling my vision. His Adam's apple bobbed, his voice slightly hoarse. "Wait until I'm out before you. Clean clothes are in the cabinet. Put them on yourself after you finish washing." I I was already heavily intoxicated, but my subconscious was still active. I opened my eyes and looked at him blankly. We could shower together. Zayn didn't say a word, turned and left. His steps were hurried, almost like a hasty retreat. The bathroom door slammed shut in front of me, and the space suddenly felt quiet. After a long while, I curled my lips, lowered my head, and buried my face in the water, letting my tears merge with it. That night, I dreamed of many things. I dreamed of my childhood, when my mom was still around, before the family started the company, when we were still very poor. A month before my 4th birthday, one day after school, it was suddenly my dad who came to pick me up from kindergarten. I asked him, "Where's Mom?" My dad touched my hair and after a long pause said, "Mom went away to work to earn money to buy a Barbie doll." I burst into tears. "I don't want a Barbie doll. I want Mom." For a whole month, I was depressed and lost a lot of weight. Then, on my birthday, my mom, looking travel-worn, pushed open the door, swept me into her arms, and stroked my hair, saying, "Mom's back to be with you now. I'm never leaving again." She loved calling me Ja when registering my name. She almost put down Ja. Later, a fortune teller said my fate was too strong for that name to hold, so it was changed to Stella and Ja became my pet name. Back then, my dad adored me too. When starting the company, my mom was the main force, and he assisted while also taking care of me. Mom is too busy, so dad will watch Ja grow up. After my mom passed, Iris brought Luna into the house, hypocritically calling me Stella, and my dad followed suit. I never understood why he had changed so much. I was just deeply saddened. In my haze, I felt a hand reach over and gently wipe away the tears at the corner of my eyes. A familiar, gentle voice sounded right by my ear. Ja. I wrapped my arms around his neck and whimpered, "Zayn." Then I fell into a deep, deep sleep. The next morning, I woke up to find that Zayn and I were actually sleeping in the same bed. My head was resting on his arm, and the front of his pajamas had several dried, unidentifiable stains. Awake, I froze, looked up and met his calm eyes. Tentatively, I asked, last night. I knocked but got no answer when I went in. "I found you nearly drowning yourself in the bathtub," he said, withdrawing his arm and getting out of bed. "Since you're awake, go freshen up. I'll make breakfast." Once we were seated at the breakfast table, he finally asked about last night. "Your face. Who did that?" My heart tightened, and I instinctively looked into his eyes. They were common and ruffled, but as he stared at me, they seemed to hold a sharp, perceptive intensity. I had already looked at my face in the mirror, while washing up Jean had hit me with great force. Even after a night, my face was still slightly swollen, with faint cracks at the corner of my lips. Besides, my fair skin made the handprint on my face even more pronounced. Such an obvious injury Zayn was bound to ask. I hesitated for 2 seconds, then offered the excuse I had already prepared. "I had a disagreement with a classmate yesterday. He hit me." "Which classmate?" He tapped the table with a bent finger, a cold smile playing on his lips. "Shall I have a chat with him?" No need." I was so startled I nearly jumped out of my chair. "It was just a small misunderstanding. I've already handled it. I'm in university now. I can deal with these things myself." Zayn looked at me without saying a word. When silent, his eyes held a deep coldness, giving off an intensely aggressive and stern aura. I forced myself to meet his gaze, not letting my own eyes show panic or nervousness. After a long moment, his expression suddenly softened. Then he stood up, reached out, and ruffled my soft hair. "All right then, forget it. You should rest properly." For the next few days, until the marks on my face faded, I didn't return to university for classes, and Zayn also started working from home. My roommate had submitted a leave request for me and couldn't help but ask curiously on WeChat, "Why haven't I heard you mention this uncle before?" When she asked this, I instinctively glanced up. At the desk not far away, Zayn was intently focused on his computer screen. He must be slightly short-sighted, as he wore a pair of thin, gold-rimmed glasses for long work sessions. The lenses were thin, but they contained the cold, indifferent light in his eyes, leaving only a semblance of gentle peace. But having witnessed him dealing with an employee yesterday, I knew very well that Zayn wasn't as mild-mannered as he appeared. Hugging a cushion, I found myself staring at him, lost in thought. In many ways, he and Iris didn't look alike at all. If I hadn't heard them speak with my own ears, I probably would never have guessed that Zayn and she were siblings. "What are you looking at?" I snapped back to reality and found Zayn standing in front of me. He naturally reached out and brushed my hair aside. "Your fringe is getting long. I'll take you for a trim sometime." Without thinking, I blurted out, "Why don't you and your sister look alike at all?" Zayn's hand suddenly tightened near my cheek. "My sister? When did you see her?" Realizing my slip, I paused and explained softly, "That day she came to your place. I saw her through the crack in the door." He was silent for a moment, then said calmly, "You don't need to pay her any mind. Unimportant people don't deserve your attention." I keenly sensed that he seemed very reluctant to talk about Iris, combined with the 2 unpleasant conversations I'd witnessed between him and Iris before. Could something have happened between Zayn and Iris that I didn't know about? In the following days, I continued staying at Zayn's place. Jean sent me a few more messages, but I didn't even read them. I just deleted them directly. Then he called me. I was curled up on the sofa in the study, playing a game while eating an apple Zayn had peeled for me, when my phone rang, and I saw the caller ID. I instinctively looked up at Zane. I met his calm, sharp gaze. I swallowed the piece of apple and said quietly, my classmate needs me. I'll go out to take this call. All right. I went to the living room to answer the call. Jean's tone was no longer domineering. It even carried a hint of pleading. Stella, it was all Dad's fault, but even if the company isn't huge, it's the result of over a decade of your mom's and my hard work. I listened quietly, and for some reason, I suddenly felt like laughing. I asked him, is this still yours and Mom's company when you transferred half the shares to Iris? It essentially became your and her company. What does it have to do with my mom anymore? Over the past couple of days, while Zane worked, I had been staying with him in the study, listening to him handle business. He didn't avoid me and said whatever needed to be said in front of me yesterday. Zane received a call, probably from Iris. From his terse, cold responses, I finally vaguely understood that the cooperation crisis Jean was facing seemed to be due to him trusting Iris' advice and partnering with some unreliable factory. Jean's voice faltered. Shut up. I snapped sharply. Don't think playing the emotional card will soften me. The more you bring my mom into this, the more disgusted I feel, Jean. You don't deserve to call me Ja. After saying that, without waiting for his response, I decisively hung up. The pent-up frustration of the last few days finally dissipated. I stood in the living room in a daze for a moment, then pushed the study door open and went back in. Zane was still sitting at the desk, his gold-rimmed glasses on, focused on his work, seemingly unaware of what I had just said outside. I stared at him for a while until he looked up, his gaze calm. What is it? I'm hungry. He typed a few keys, then pushed his chair back and stood up. What would you like? I'll make it. I followed him through the living room into the kitchen, watching him roll up his sleeves and put on an apron dot as he turned to get something from the fridge. He bumped into me before I could step back. I lost my balance and fell backward. But Zane caught me by the waist and pulled me back against his chest. Seizing the opportunity, I boldly rubbed my cheek against his shirt. Ja, he warned in a low voice, stand up straight. I won't. I looked up at the clean line of his jaw. Unless you carry me out right now, I'll just stand here and watch you cook. I continued looking up at him, meeting his gaze as if in a silent standoff. After a moment, the corner of his mouth lifted in a smile that was both helpless and teasing. You've gotten much bolder now. I can't see any trace of the terrified, trembling girl who stopped my car. Asterisk, because that was all an act, asterisk. I retorted silently. Because you're a good person, I said instead, boldly wrapping my arms around his slim waist. If you were a bad person, I would have run away without looking back. A good person. His movements halted when he looked at me again. There was a deep, unreadable emotion in his eyes. Yes, I nodded seriously, my fingers moving up to trace the beautiful lines of his shoulder blades. Zane actually had a great physique, the kind that looked lean and close, but was well muscled underneath, with attractive bone structure. I wanted to explore further, but suddenly I was lifted into the air. Such a light little girl. What are you always thinking about? He carried me to the living room, set me down on the soft sofa, then crouched in front of me, his gaze intense, his nose almost touching mine. Stay put. After saying that, he stood up and went back to the kitchen to cook. Sitting on the sofa, feeling frustrated, I sent a message to Jude. If a man consistently and decisively rejects me no matter how I try to seduce him, what does it mean? Jude was my senior. During her time at university, she'd had several passionate, dramatic relationships. Even after graduating and leaving, many male students still remembered her fondly. A man, Jude replied quickly. Either he loves you too much, or he's incapable. I froze for a moment. The word love felt too heavy for whatever existed between Zane and me. Our fragile connection couldn't possibly bear it. So, did that mean he was incapable? Feeling down, I ordered a bottle of lychee wine with dinner. The sparkling pink liquid sat in a glass bottle, tasting sweet and delightful. I couldn't resist having a couple more glasses. Unexpectedly, it was quite strong. On the way back, the drunkenness gradually took over. I leaned drowsily against the passenger seat, my cheeks and ears burning. Zane parked the car, then came over to open my door. I moved my hands, looked up at him pitifully, and said, my legs are weak. I can't walk. A hint of helplessness touched the smile on his lips. He naturally reached out and lifted me from the car. I pressed my face against his chest, listening to his gradually quickening heartbeat. He held me steadily. I barely felt any jostling doubt in my daze. I could only sense a shifting light and darkness before my eyes, followed by a faint, warm, fragrant scent. Ja, we're home. My nose suddenly stung. The moment Zane set me down, I threw myself into his arms and burst into tears. It's been so long since I had a home. I clutched the fabric of his shirt desperately. Zane, I have no home. Before discovering Jean and Iris's relationship, my mom's health had rapidly deteriorated. During the months she lay emaciated in bed, Jean was almost never around. When I called him, he said, Ja, with your mom so ill, someone has to look after the company. My mom seemed to foresee something. That day, after getting a painkiller injection from the doctor, she mustered her strength and went with me to the property registry office, transferring the title of the family's most valuable property to my name. Ja, I've also left you some valuable jewelry and gold in a safe deposit box at the bank. Her speech was broken due to the pain. Your dad can't be relied on anymore after I'm gone. The company won't last long under him alone, Maija. You don't need to depend on him to live well." Her thin, frail hand reached out, trembling as she stroked my hair over and over. The back of her hand covered in dense needle marks. I gripped her hand, shaking my head desperately, crying until I was breathless. My mom turned her head and coughed violently. I went to the bathroom in the single room to wring out a towel for her, and that's when Jean brought Iris in. "You can go in peace. From now on, I'll hand over all the family assets to Iris to manage. She's a good woman and will treat Stella well too." It was Jean's voice, devoid of any sorrow. "What a pity, sister. You worked so hard all these years. But I'll be the one enjoying the fruits of your labor." It was Iris's voice, even carrying a hint of a smile. Those two sentences, those two voices, were etched into my memory, stroke by stroke, remembered to this day. People's hearts change easily, yet they say it's the other's heart that has changed. There are many things in this world I cannot understand, like how Jean, after 20 years of marriage with my mom, could change his heart so completely. Like how Iris could break up a family so unapologetically and not face any consequences. Like, why did Zane, whom I couldn't help falling for, have to be that identity? There were no answers. Countless complex emotions swirled in my heart. Later, I cried in Zane's arms, breathless with sobs. He patiently wiped my tears away, again and again, calling my name, over and over, Ja. I grabbed his hand, opened my mouth, and said, "Don't leave me. I won't, Ja. Mom, don't leave me," I murmured, my consciousness hazy, until I sank into darkness. I have no memory of what happened after that. When I woke up the next day, I was lying in bed wearing clean pajamas. The mint green chiffon dress from yesterday was washed, dried, and hanging by the bed. I got up, my head throbbing faintly, and walked to the bathroom, only to be startled by my puffy, red eyes in the mirror. When I went out, Zane was just placing fried toast on the dining table. He poured a glass of milk and set it in front of me, saying softly, "Is the hangover better?" "Yeah, eat first." I ate breakfast while stealing anxious glances at him from time to time, unsure if I had said anything I shouldn't have while drunk last night. Probably, some emotions and worries had been pent up inside me for too long. Combined with the alcohol, I had lost control. Zane's expression gave nothing away. On my 20th furtive glance, he suddenly reached out, brushed aside the stray hair near my ear, and said, "After your classes today, go back to your dorm and pack your things." "Ah?" I looked at him blankly, not understanding what he meant. "Your daily necessities, change of clothes, books for class." As he spoke, he stood up, picked up his tie from the back of the sofa, and started putting it on. "In short, pack everything you use regularly. I'll drive to pick you up in the afternoon. My place is spacious. You've lived in that guest room long enough to be familiar with it. If you need anything else, we can get it this weekend. From now on, I'll drive you to university in the mornings, in the afternoons. You can take a taxi back, or I can arrange for someone to pick you up." He spoke calmly, outlining an extremely cozy and heartwarming picture with his words. So beautiful, so touching. But why? Seeing me just staring at him dumbly, as if I hadn't processed it, he walked over, took my hand directly, and said, "A young girl like you shouldn't carry so many worries in her heart, Zane." "What do you mean by this?" "I mean, Ja, move in and live with me." He reached out and ruffled my hair, his touch gentle. "From now on, you can completely consider this your home." After my afternoon classes, I went back to the dorm to pack. My roommate looked at me in surprise. "Stella, are you not coming back to stay anymore?" I tossed a folded nightgown into my suitcase and shook my head. "Not necessarily. I might still come back occasionally if I have a lot of classes." In the end, I dragged two large suitcases downstairs. My roommate kindly helped me with the remaining bits and pieces. Zane was waiting downstairs. He took the luggage from me and put it in the boot. My roommate's eyes nearly popped out of her head when she saw him. After I got in the car, she sent me a WeChat message. "Stella, is that your uncle?" "Yes, oh my god, he's so handsome. Does he have a girlfriend?" I glanced up. Zane was focused on driving, his cool, detached eyes reflected in a rearview mirror. So I lowered my head and replied, "He does." My roommate expressed her disappointment. The car arrived at the building, and Zane helped me carry my cases upstairs. I followed behind with 2 bags of miscellaneous items. Once inside, I discovered he had even cleared out the small room next to the guest bedroom for me. "This is your walk-in wardrobe." Zane handed me the keys. "Young girls love to look pretty. This room is all yours." "I won't enter." The cold keys pressed into my palm, a slight pain traveling from my fingertips to my heart. For a moment, I felt tears welling up again. Zane sighed helplessly and reached out to wipe the moisture from the corner of my eye. "No wonder you're called, Ja. Where do all these tears come from?" I shook my head, not saying a word, just threw myself into his arms and held him tightly. And so, Zane and I started living together. He handled almost all the household chores, thinking about how busy he was with work yet still found time to look after me. I felt terribly guilty and offered to help share the load. I said this while Zane was making snacks in the kitchen, because I'd seen a video of cheesy baked mashed potatoes before bed last night and had been craving it ever since. He tilted his head slightly, listening to me patiently, then said calmly, "No need. Even if you weren't living here, I'd still be doing these chores. It's different, since I'm living here for free. I should pay some kind of rent." Zayn looked at me for a few seconds, then suddenly laughed. Alright, then go to the fridge and get the bacon we bought yesterday. Is that even considered helping? I glared at Zayn. He reached out as if to habitually ruffle my hair, but remembering his hands were covered in potato, he pulled back just before touching me. Go on, then. I actually turned and obediently fetched the bacon, then sat at the kitchen island, propping my chin up to watch Zayn. It wasn't until he placed the steaming hot mashed potatoes in front of me and handed me a spoon that I spoke again. Zayn, you know, since Mom left, no one has taken care of me like this. He didn't respond. Instead, he took off his apron and walked towards the bathroom on the other side. The lingering buttery, milky scent mixed with his faint grapefruit fragrance, creating an intangible warmth. Zayn took a few steps, then stopped and looked back at me. After all, you've called me Mom twice now. I can't take advantage for nothing. With that, he walked straight into the bathroom. Without another glance, I called Zayn. Twice, Mom. I desperately searched my memories, and after a moment, I realized, horrifyingly, that it seemed to be true. I sat on the high stool, spoon in hand, my ears turning redder by the second. The longer I lived with Zayn, the more I discovered he was actually a gentle and considerate person, completely different from the cold and aloof man I initially thought he was. Once, I pretended to be scared after watching a horror film and went to knock on his door in the middle of the night, saying I wanted to sleep with him. In the dim light of the bedside lamp, Zayn's sharp jawline softened bit by bit, a trace of sleepiness still in his eyes. He sighed helplessly and moved aside to let me in. Come on, if you know you're easily scared, why watch horror films? Wrapped in his duvet, surrounded by his lingering warmth, I quickly grew sleepy again. When I started it, I thought it was just a sci-fi film, but in the middle of the night, my period arrived. In my groggy state, I realized something was wrong, struggling to open my eyes. I turned on the bedside lamp and saw the glaring red stain on Zayn's pajama bottoms. Only then did I understand what had happened. My face instantly flushed bright red, and I felt like I was on fire. He, however, remained perfectly calm, his expression steady and gentle, showing no sign of disgust. Get up, go change your clothes, then come back to sleep. I'll change the sheets. By the time I'd sorted myself out and returned, the sheets in Zayn's pajamas had been changed, and the room was filled with a faint, sweet fragrance. A soft little blanket had been spread over the spot where I'd originally slept. The next morning, the milk at breakfast had been replaced with steaming hot ginger and brown sugar tea. Later, I played a few more games with Zyvan. He successfully got me to the king rank and even taught me the basics of playing as a jungler. I told him about my discoveries regarding Zayn. Zyvan was silent for 2 seconds, then his voice shot up an octave. Consider it, I'll accept. But gentle, are you joking? What's wrong, Joe? You have no idea how terrifying Zayn can be when he's angry at the company. The other day, I had 2 wrong figures in my proposal that I didn't catch. During the review, Zayn spotted them. He didn't say a word, just stared at me, and I felt like I was going to be fired on the spot. I glanced up. Zayn was sitting on the nearby sofa reading a book. Hearing the noise, he looked over, a faint, amused smile playing on his lips. Of course, in the end, Zayn just told me to fix the proposal and didn't fire me. But I felt like I'd narrowly escaped death. Zyvan was still rambling on. I couldn't help but interrupt him. I'm not wearing headphones. Your boss Zayn is sitting right next to me. The air went dead silent. A moment later, Zyvan let out a wail. Joe, you've doomed me. Then he instantly left the game and logged off. And I laughed, my eyes curving into crescents. I glanced over at Zayn again and saw the smile on his lips deepen. Then he opened his arms to me. I threw myself into his embrace, and he caught me firmly. I took the opportunity to nuzzle against his chest. Zayn raised his hand, stroking my hair gently, and asked, your holidays are coming up soon, right, ma'am? I counted on my fingers. 1 more month until exam season. Exam season lasts 2 weeks. Then it's the summer holidays. During the summer holidays, I'll take you to Shanghai. He said it in a very matter-of-fact tone. Didn't you always want to go to Disneyland to see that pink fox? Pink fox? I was stunned for a moment, then realized she's called Linabelle. Zayn nodded, as if the name didn't matter. All right, Linabelle it is. You'll get to see her in a couple of months. I've been watching videos of Linabelle lately, expressing how much I wanted to see her in person. I thought it was just a small thing, never imagining Zayn would remember. I sniffled, buried my face in Zayn's chest, and said quietly, Zayn, why are you so good to me? I might not be a good person, maybe. One day in the future, you'll regret this. 1 second to seconds. The silence stretched on for a long time before Zayn's deep voice reached my ears. Don't overthink it. GIA. As long as I believe you're worth it. That's enough. My eyes stung, and I held him even tighter. Jean's birthday was in 2 months. My original plan was to go to his birthday party arm in arm with Zayn, in front of Iris, shatter their dream of marriage. But at this moment, I suddenly just wanted to keep deceiving myself and continue escaping. To pretend the lies I'd woven were true. To pretend my flirtation stemmed purely from genuine affection. To pretend my beginning with Zayn wasn't born out of a desire for revenge. Because I couldn't bear to lose him. I didn't ask Zayn about Iris again. But the scene I witnessed from his car that day weighed heavily on my heart. Who was that man with Iris for Luna? Who was so spoiled to allow him to fix her hair? Their relationship must be very close. Thinking of Gene, I couldn't help but feel a bitter amusement. He held Iris and Luna in such high regard. He probably had no idea that man existed. If he knew, perhaps he would get a small taste of what my mom felt in her final days. Gazing at the fine curtain of rain outside the window, I pondered what to tell Gene about this. Just then, I heard the sound of the door opening behind me. I quickly composed my expression and ran to the entrance. Zane, you're back. I've been busy with final exams lately, and Iris hadn't been idle either. From snippets of conversation I'd overheard and news from Zyban, it seemed Zane was working on a very important company project that couldn't afford any mistakes. One evening after studying, I went to the study to find him and caught him on the phone by the window. He was speaking so intently he didn't hear me enter. So I clearly heard him say, "Still dreaming I'll help you? Are you even worthy?" His voice was icy and ruthless. It was like a sudden wake-up call, and my face paled slightly. Because in that moment, I realized that if Zane found out I had approached him with ulterior motives, from the start, just for revenge, all the tenderness and care he's shown me whose origins I still didn't understand would instantly crumble. Zane hung up the phone, his back to me as he looked out the window, silent for a while. I walked over and wrapped my arms around his waist from behind. When he turned around, I noticed he had an unlit cigarette between his lips. I said sullenly, "Zane, kiss me." He took the cigarette from his mouth and was silent for a moment. Just when I thought he would refuse me again, a hand gripped my chin, and the next second, a dense, burning kiss descended. I instinctively took a step back, leaning away, but he pulled me back by the waist. As our breaths mingled, a faint smell of alcohol hit me, sensing something was off. I turned my head and spotted an empty glass on the desk. "Zane, have you been drinking again? HMM? Don't like it?" His forehead pressed against mine. His breathing rapid. "I won't drink next time." It wasn't that I disliked it. I was just suddenly curious why the always composed and restrained Zane would be drinking alone in his study. After hearing my question, he didn't answer. Instead, his gaze turned deep and cold as he looked at me. If you knew." He stopped mid-sentence. I didn't catch the last few words, so I leaned closer and pressed. "If what?" "Oh, never mind, it's nothing." He crumpled the cigarette and tossed it in the bin, then took my hand and led me out. "Didn't you break your phone screen yesterday? I bought you a new one. Put your SIM card in and try it out." Having lived at Zane's for several months, I felt I owed him too much and wanted to repay him somehow. I decided to find time to go back to my family home to retrieve something. Classes had ended for the semester. I woke up very late the next morning to find Zane already gone. But that was just as well. It made it easier for me to go home and get what I needed. I went out, took a taxi back to my family home. But upon opening the door, I unexpectedly ran straight into Iris. She was wearing a rust red dress, her hair disheveled, face pale, her spine slightly bent. When she saw me, complex emotions flashed in her eyes. Resentment, venom. I froze, then suddenly realized the door behind her led to my room, and the box she was clutching. I rushed over, grabbed her wrist, and stared at her fiercely. "What were you doing in my room? Why are you taking my things?" Iris shrieked, "Let go." Not only did I not let go, I tightened my grip, because I remembered that the box in her hand contained the gold jewelry my mom had left me, pieces she brought with her when she married Gene, along with a gold piece lock I wore as a child. When Iris moved in with Luna, I had moved many of my things to the flat under my name, but these items, locked deep in the wardrobe, I hadn't had time to take yet. "Let go," I snapped sharply, sneaking into my room, stealing my things. "Iris, have you no shame?" Iris stared at me for some reason, despite the hot weather. Her arms were slick with cold sweat. "Stella, this is my home now. I'm the lady of the house. Your mom is dead and your dad threw you out. Do you really think these things still belong to you?" Hearing her dare to mention my mom, a wave of fury surged through me. My mind went blank, and I raised my hand and slapped her across the face. To my surprise, Iris didn't fight back. By the time I realized what was happening, she was curled up on the floor, clutching her stomach, cold sweat beading on her forehead. I stared at her coldly, but before I could say anything else, I saw a stark, bright red stain slowly spreading beneath Iris, stark against her rust red skirt. Iris had miscarried. The baby was almost 4 months along. The son Gene had been desperately hoping for years. After learning the news from the doctor, Gene let out a short, grief-stricken cry, turned and slapped me. He tried to hit me a second time, but I dodged by stepping back. He glared at me viciously. "Stella, that was your own brother." Profound grief made Gene's expression appear both ridiculous and pitiful. I looked up at him slightly, and after a moment, suddenly laughed heartily. "Really? That's wonderful news, Stella." "Gene, I didn't see you this distraught when Mom passed." I looked at him expressionlessly, then suddenly curled my lips. "Perhaps you should see it from another angle. This is a retribution for you, and that woman causing Mom's death. Your mom died of illness, Stella." "How dare you say that?" I had been about to leave, but upon hearing this, I whipped my head around, my eyes fixed on him with intense hatred. "She was sick, lying in the hospital for 5 months, and you only visited her 3 times in total. The last time you brought Iris. You always had such noble, justified reasons, Gene. How can you live with yourself? Aren't you afraid of karma?" He He seemed struck by my words, his whole body slumping in defeat. Just then, the doctor came out and said Iris was awake. Without another look at me, he turned and entered the hospital room. I sat alone on a chair in the corridor. The smell of disinfectant mixed with a lingering hint of blood filled my nose, churning my thoughts into chaos. But when I took out my phone, opened my chat with Zane, and rested my fingers on the keyboard, I suddenly sobered up. The person lying in that hospital room was his sister. Even if they had their differences for now, Iris was his real family. If he found out my true purpose for getting close to him, what would he think? I couldn't bear to think about it. I forced a difficult smile and went to close the chat window. But as if sensing my thoughts, Zane called at that very moment. Hesitating for a moment, I answered but didn't know what to say. So I remained silent, waiting for him to speak first. Ja, where are you? There was a subtle urgency in his tone, but I didn't pay it much mind at the time. After a long silence, I finally spoke slowly. I just one word out. I abruptly realized how hoarse my voice was. I quickly covered the receiver, turned my head to clear my throat, and then spoke again. I had to go back to campus for something. I'll probably stay in the dorm tonight and won't be back. On the other end of the line, Zane was uncharacteristically silent. The corridor was quiet and deserted. I could almost hear my own nervous, rapid heartbeat. Just then, the hospital room door was pushed open again. Gene stood in the doorway, his tone complex as he called out to me, "Stella, come here." I practically fumbled to hang up the phone. Following him into the room, I immediately saw Iris lying on the hospital bed, her face pale. She put on an understanding expression, her voice weak. "Stella, even though you're an adult now, in your dad's and my heart, you're still a child. You acted without thinking. I don't blame you and won't actually hold you responsible. But your dad's company is his life's work. At a time like this, you should step up and help." I understood. She was threatening me. She was using the child she lost to threaten me. If I didn't hand over the flat to help Jean's company through this crisis, she would hold me responsible for causing her miscarriage. I looked at Jean. He was gazing at Iris with a mix of gratitude and pity, undoubtedly moved by her seemingly selfless concern for him. But it only made me nauseous. I remained silent for a moment. So Jean spoke to me. "Stella, what good does it do you if the family company goes under? How can you be so heartless?" Of course, it did me no good. But their unhappiness was my greatest satisfaction. After a standoff, Iris let out a soft sigh. "Stella, it's not that Auntie wants to harm you, but this child was, after all, your brother. Since you don't consider your dad and me family, I'll have no choice but to call the police." I stood straight, pursed my lips, and stared at them without a word. Just then, there was a sound of the door opening behind me, followed by a voice I knew all too well. "Brother, you have the nerve to say that." It felt like a thunderclap exploded in my head. I stood frozen, even my fingertips beginning to tremble uncontrollably. It took me a long time to finally turn around and see Zane standing there, his expression indifferent, a trace of cold mockery in his eyes. Exactly how this child came to be, and how it was lost. "Iris, you should know better than anyone. Shouldn't you?" Jean roared. "Zane, what do you mean by that?" "I mean, you've been wearing that green hat for so many years. You've truly made a significant contribution to the nation's environmental efforts." Zane sneered, his sharp gaze sweeping over Jean's face. "If I were you, I'd go get a paternity test done with both that unformed embryo and the 5-year-old Luna you've been raising." "Jean, you can't possibly be unaware that you have oligospermia, can you?" Jean stood rigid, as if the life had drained out of him in an instant, his lips trembling. A moment later, he suddenly pushed past Zane and rushed out of the room. Iris lay on the hospital bed, her face ashen as she looked at Zane. "It was you set me up in the beginning." Zane walked in unhurriedly, step by step, until he reached her bedside. The room was silent except for the clear sound of his shoes hitting the floor. Each step felt like it was trampling on my heart. He stopped by Iris's bed, looked down at her slightly, his gaze looming over her. "Of course, did you really think a fool like you could land such a big deal? Iris, look at you. You love Luke so much, even let Gene raise his daughter. But what about him? He knew it was a trap and still watched you walk right into it. He told you to get the money, and you did. He's the one who caused you to lose the baby, yet you pinned the blame on a young girl." He curled his lips, but his eyes held no warmth, only ice. "Don't you think you're pathetic, sister?" He emphasized the last two words heavily, a flash of ferocity in his eyes. Iris lay on her back, her face the color of ashes. It took her a long time to utter. "Zane, why? Why don't you like me?" I couldn't take it anymore. I turned and bolted for the door. Zane caught up with me near the garden downstairs. He grabbed my wrist urgently. "Zane." I whipped my head around, my eyes red as I glared at him. "You knew who I was all along, and you knew why I approached you, didn't you?" "Shut up," I snapped sharply. "What right do you have to call me that? You have no right to call me that." How naive I had been, thinking my acting was superb, my lies seamless. Believing he let me stay out of pity or some faint affection, arrogantly assuming he would be hurt and saddened. When he learned the truth, I wasn't innocent either. My motives for getting close to him weren't pure. But during our time together, I had succumbed to his tenderness and care. Yet Zane, watching my gradual descent, had probably remained clear-headed the entire time. Like he was watching a joke, the truly foolish one was me. I used my other hand to pry Zane's fingers off my wrist one by one, only then noticing my palm was slick with blood. I had clenched my fist so tightly in the hospital room that my nails had dug deep into my skin. The bright red blood from my fingertips stained his hand. Zane looked at me, a flicker of pain in his eyes. Your wound needs dressing. I closed my eyes, suppressing the turmoil inside, trying to face him with as much composure as I could muster. Zane, I have a question for you. Go ahead. What is the real relationship between you and Iris? This was what I was most curious about. It had sprouted in my heart from the first time I saw him, and Iris talking through the crack of the door at his place. And now, after hearing their conversation in the hospital room, she and I are siblings without blood ties. Zane looked at me steadily, his voice calm. Before my dad married into the Yale family, he had a girlfriend he'd been with for years. Even after marrying my mom, he never broke. It oft thought my mom had been very late. By then, Iris was already 6. But she isn't my dad's child, so that was it. So that was it. You hate Iris and you hate her mother. So you want revenge on her, I said softly, then looked up at him. You knew who I was from the moment I stopped your car, didn't you? Yes? My voice trembled, my vision blurred by tears. And you had already decided then to use me to get back at Iris, didn't you? No. Zane's gaze remained fixed on my eyes, a pained expression surfacing in his pupils. Dealing with her is my own business. I don't need to use anyone. I never intended to involve you in what happened today, so why did you suddenly go back home today? Why did I suddenly go home? Why did I suddenly go home? The air hung heavy for a moment. I wiped my tears harshly, pulled a bank card from my pocket and threw it at Zane with force. I went back to get money. I pressed my lips together, staring coldly at him. Zane, I've been living at your place for so long, eating your food, using your things. There's 100,000 in there. Money I saved from New Year's gifts since I was little. It should be enough to pay you back. If it's not enough, I'll find another way. Originally, I had gone back to get that card intending to buy Zane a gift to thank him. But now, none of that was necessary. I'll send you the pin via WeChat later. After my exams, I'll come by your place to get my things. Let's not have any more contact after that. Having said that, I turned and walked away without looking back. Zane's hand lifted slightly but didn't catch me, his fingertips only brushing lightly against the soft fabric of my dress. The matter was resolved and I was proactively withdrawing, not clinging to him for Zane. This should be something to be thankful for, right? I strode towards a hospital entrance, walking faster and faster. The wound on my palm, soaked with tears, throbbed with a sharp pain. This pain quickly brought me back to my senses, reminding me of those clumsy, awkward attempts at seduction, of that intoxicating, blush-inducing night that often revisited my dreams. I had thought it was because Zane, too, couldn't resist his feelings for me. But in the end, it was just my wishful thinking. I moved back into the dormitory. My roommate was very surprised to see me back. Stella, I thought you were staying at your uncle's place. The exams are coming up. So I'm just staying here for a couple of weeks, I said, deliberately ignoring the pang in my heart when she mentioned Zane. I'll move back after the exams. Oh. My roommate looked enlightened, then went to the library to study. I sat there, flipping through books, but my mind was a tangled mess, barely able to process a single word. Zane had torn away Iris's facade. She could no longer pretend. And after Jean got the paternity results for Luna, he kicked both mother and daughter out of the Wood family. They weren't doing well. The man named Luke was the same person Zane and I had seen at the mall entrance that day. That unreliable order initially came about because Iris, to help Luke, connected him with Jean. When the order fell through and the company nearly collapsed, Zane appeared while Jean was desperate for help, buying up most of the shares from him and Iris, becoming the company's largest shareholder. Iris miscarried that day because she had gone to see Luke. They had a huge argument. Luke hit her and pressured her for money. Iris had no money left, so she went back to steal the jewelry my mom left me, never expecting to run into me. Later, she and Jean tried to pressure me for money, hoping to buy back the shares from Zane. Jean came to the university later and told me all this. He arrived at dusk. The slanting sunlight filtering through the fir trees was mostly blocked by the lush branches, casting sparse shadows on the ground. I had just finished a specialized course exam, my mind weary. I just nodded expressionlessly. I know. Jean's hair had streaks of gray, and his tall frame was stooped, as if he had aged 10 years in just a few days. His lips trembled, and it took him a long time to say, "Ja, move back home. Dad only has you now." I didn't speak. His eyes reddened, and he slapped himself across the face. It was Dad's fault. Dad was blinded. Failed your mom in the end. I didn't agree to move back. I just left. Time only moves forward. It never looks back. So do people in events. Seeing him only reminded me of my mom's pale face lying on the hospital bed. The 2 slaps he gave me. How he sided with Iris and Luna after they moved in, excluding me. I could never forgive, never forget. The following days were packed with exams. I was so busy I felt dizzy. By the time I realized, rumors had already spread around the faculty. They said Stella, a fresher in the automation department, was being kept by a wealthy man, even living with him. Many people had seen Zane's expensive car parked outside the dorm when he picked me up last time. It seemed I had no way to refute it, and I couldn't be bothered to try. Everything concerning Zayn had drained all my energy. Just the thought of his name brought back a flood of chaotic memories, tearing open a continuous ache in my heart. A couple of days ago, Zyvan messaged me on WeChat. Xiao Kiao, Zayn seems in a bad mood these days. Did you two have a fight in a bad mood? After finally getting his revenge on Iris, shouldn't he be happy after a long silence? I told him, Zayn and I broke up. You don't have to carry me anymore. After saying that, I blocked him on WeChat. But when I logged into the game, I saw his message, your breakup with Zayn has nothing to do with me. Xiao Kiao, we played so many ranked games together. How many times have I sacrificed myself to save you? That's a bond forged in life and death. How can it just end because you broke up with Zayn? In the end, I unblocked him actually. Some things couldn't be entirely blamed on Zayn. After my exams ended and I calmed down, thinking back carefully, I realized there were many details during my time with Zayn where I had already given myself away. Time and again, when he seemed to readily believe my clumsy lies, I had never once suspected anything. My roommate sat opposite me, biting her bubble tea straw rudely. Stella, do you want to post something on the confessions wall to clarify? He's your own uncle. She had always been concerned for me, and never believed them. Rumors. Touched. I shook my head. It's fine, the innocent need not defend themselves. But after lunch, I just took a nap. And when I woke up, the rumors had completely shifted. My roommate, climbing the ladder to her bunk, looked down at my sleepy face in shock. Stella, I had no idea you were a real rich lady. How did you manage to run a company at such a young age? I stared at her blankly until she sent me a link on WeChat. I clicked it. Look, it was an official clarification from the university, stating that I came from a well-off family, that the Bentley was indeed a family car, and it included a very prominent screenshot. The screenshot showed that nearly half of the shares of Brightwood Company were registered under my name. And this Brightwood Company was the one my mom and Jean had founded before she passed. Before we knew about Iris, Jean had tricked my mom into transferring her shares to him after mom died. He immediately gave them to Iris. But shouldn't most of their shares now be with Zayn? I froze, a scene suddenly flashing in my mind. When I was still living at Zayn's, one evening he brought out a bottle of red wine and was slowly drinking. I couldn't resist and had a couple of glasses too, eventually, drunk. Zayn pressed me against the desk, kissing me until I was dizzy. In my daze, it seemed he coaxed me into signing to documents. So, were those the share transfer agreement and the capital contribution certificate? What did Zayn mean by this? Biting my lip, I took out my phone and called him. After 2 rings, Zayn answered. Zayn, what's going on? With the company shares, I got straight to the point. That night I was drunk. What exactly were those documents you had me sign? Zayn admitted readily. They were the share transfer agreement and the capital contribution certificate. The capital proof used the card you threw at me last time. The change registration process is almost complete. You'll need to come to the company next week for the shareholders meeting. I was annoyed. I didn't go through the procedures in person. Zayn, what tricks did you pull? He chuckled softly. Getting things back might take some effort, but giving them away is easy. Zayn, what do you mean by that? I dug my nails into my palm, barely managing to get the words out after a long moment. I don't need your charity. It's not charity, this was always yours. If your mom were still here, she would have left it to you eventually. I'm just returning it to its rightful owner. He paused. Slightly, happy birthday. Today was my 20th birthday. His gentle voice seemed infused with a soft white moonlight, pulling me back into the intimacy of our past. Many details of my time with Zayn surfaced in my heart. How much of it was acting, and how much was genuine, I could no longer distinguish. After a long while, I finally snapped out of my memories and said calmly, "You were so sure I'd call you today?" "No, I was just waiting." Zayn gave a light laugh on the other end. "It would have been alright if you didn't call." His tone lowered, seemingly carrying a hint of barely perceptible disappointment. My heart clenched. I sniffled, feeling my eyes sting. Neither Zayn nor I spoke further. For a moment, only the sound of each other's breathing came through the phone. After a long silence, Zayn finally spoke again. Since exams are over, move back." His voice bewitched me. Memories and past affection surged up together, and I almost agreed immediately. But the last shred of reason stopped me. I deliberately made my tone cold. "Zayn, do you think I can just pretend nothing happened and go back to how things were between us? I won't move back in. I'll come by tomorrow to get my things, then move out." "Where will you go?" I said stiffly. "I'll go live in my own flat." Zayn was silent for a moment, his tone still gentle. "All right, then I'll pick you up tomorrow." The next morning, when I went downstairs, Zayn's Bentley was already parked there. I opened the back door, got in, and then just looked at him without a word. 2 weeks apart, he seemed to have lost some weight. The coldness and aloofness he used to have around me seemed to have completely vanished, replaced by pure tenderness. It was as if none of it had happened and we were still the same as before. My eyes stunned. I turned my head away, trying to keep my voice level. "Let's go." We didn't speak for the rest of the journey. At Zayn's place, I went straight to the guest room and started packing my things. The familiar grapefruit scent lingered in the air, mingling with the faint smell of tobacco, creating a lazy, intoxicating atmosphere. For a moment, I almost couldn't stop myself from telling Zane I still loved him. I had only lived in this flat for a few months, but it held so many of my emotions and memories that just being here made me think of countless things. That rainy night, Zane found me wandering the streets and carried me home. That evening, he got drunk, lost control, and almost let me have my way. Last time I moved my things in, Zane told me, "Ja, you can completely consider this your home." Every word was still etched in my memory. I clutched the mint green chiffon dress in my hand, tears threatening to fall again. Then, Zane's deep voice suddenly sounded behind me. When Iris's mother disappeared, my dad forcibly brought Iris into our home. The second month, she slipped into my room in a camisole and hid under my covers. My movements halted abruptly, my entire body freezing. By then, my dad had already consolidated power in the company. My mom's authority was almost completely sidelined. She couldn't make any decisions. After many years of marriage, the person he still yearned for was Iris's mother. If Iris had been his biological daughter, the company would probably have been under her name long ago. I turned to see him leaning by the window, a cigarette between his lips. He gave me a faint smile, then took the half-smoked cigarette and stuffed it out in an ashtray nearby. It was summer, noon. The brilliant sunlight streamed through the glass, making his cool, fair skin almost translucent, his pupils glowing a light amber. "Ja? I knew your mother. I discussed cooperation with her before, though it didn't work out in the end. I knew about you from the start. If it weren't for me, Iris wouldn't have had the chance to meet your father. I admit, I felt guilty towards you. That day you stopped my car, I recognized you. I let you in because I saw my 10 years younger self in you. I never intended to use you, Ja. I just didn't want you to repeat my mistakes." His low voice transformed into an intangible current, carrying a gentle force that seeped slowly and thoroughly into my heart. His words dragged me into memories of that night I pretended to be panicked, when he knelt before me, patiently tending to the wounds on my knees. My feelings for him had started at that moment. My fingers tightened on a chiffon dress, making a rustling sound. It took me a long time to find my voice again. "Then why didn't you tell me you knew who I was all along?" "Because you didn't intend to tell me." His gaze remained fixed on my eyes. "Ja, I gave you many chances to come clean. That time it rained when I went to pick you up and countless times after. You chose to hide the truth. I thought maybe you were still wary, didn't trust my sincerity. So I decided to take it slow. Wait until everything was settled before telling you the truth. But then you suddenly went home that day and found out everything unexpectedly." I stared at him blankly. The cold shell I had struggled to maintain was shattered piece by Zane's words. My thoughts became a tangled mess. What sincerity? I know you lack a sense of security. So now, I'm laying my heart bare for you to see. The wind blew through the screen, lifting the light gauze curtains. His handsome, stern face, bathed in light and shifting shadows, appeared exceptionally sincere and tender. "Ja, I love you." I was almost completely captivated by those eyes. Flustered, I turned away abruptly. The next second, warm arms encircled my waist from behind. Zane rested his chin on my shoulder, his warm breath brushing my hair, making me itch and instinctively shrink my neck. "Ja, don't move out, all right?" The air grew still. I sat there silently. The mint green dress crumpled in my hands. After a long time, I finally spoke, my voice soft. "All right, later." Emboldened by his affection, I teased Zane, a 28-year-old man. Yet you confess like a university boy? How immature. Zane, who had been reading, sighed, stretched out a long arm, and pulled me into his embrace. "My apologies. In 28 years, you're the only one I've ever liked. No experience. I'll do better next time." I looked up at him, incredulous. "You think there'll be a next time?" Zane looked at me, a smile playing on his lips, but said nothing. Infuriated, I broke free from his embrace and looked at him suspiciously. "Zane, are you sure there's nothing wrong with you? We've been together for so long. And all you do is kiss and hold me, nothing else." Propping his chin, he looked at me leisurely. "And what would you like me to do? Ja? To elaborate, I stammered for a bit, then suddenly realized and pointed at him. "You're teasing me." He just sat there, watching me and smiling. I turned away in a huff and headed for the bedroom. "Since you don't want me, I won't bother with you either. HMPH, I'll go find Zyvan." The words he said he'd carry me to the new season S rank hadn't even left my mouth, when I was suddenly lifted into the air and thrown onto the bed. Zane stood by the bed, looking down at me. "What do you want with Zyvan?" His eyes were a bit cold, quite imposing. I immediately felt small and said quietly, "To play games." Zane nodded. "Play games." He leaned down, his damp kisses falling on my eyes. "I'll play with you." Out of Zane's sight, I wrapped my arms around his neck, a triumphant smile curling my lips. But I soon regretted it, because this man actually started bringing up old scores. "What was it you said to me that night?" I bit my lip, pleading tearfully. "Wah, I was so young back then, didn't know any better. A child's words mean nothing." Zane's voice was gentle, his pace deliberate, but his actions showed no mercy. He even had the leisure to brush my disheveled hair behind my ear. Even a little girl who says the wrong thing should face some consequences. In the end, I was utterly exhausted, on the verge of falling asleep. felt Zane covering me with the duvet. I grabbed his hand, eyes closed, and said, "Next weekend, come with me to the cemetery to see my mom. I want to tell her not to worry anymore. She has someone to take care of her now." As I spoke, my eyes grew hot, tears threatening to fall again. I squeezed my eyes shut tighter, but Zane reached out, gently wiped the moisture from the corner of my eye, and gave me a goodnight kiss. "All right, don't worry." His voice was soft, as if lulling me to sleep. "I'll tell your mom that her company is in your hands now. I'll teach you how to manage it gradually. In your life, leave it to me to take care of. Ja, I'm here for everything." Lulled by Zane's gentle voice, I fell asleep and dreamed. In the dream, my mom's and Jean's faces appeared alternately, then gradually faded away. I was left alone, trembling, not knowing what to do. Then, someone suddenly appeared beside me and took my hand out in the dream. I looked up and saw Zane's face. The second week after officially getting together with Zane, I went with him to his company. Zane was in meetings all morning, busy handling various tasks. I sat bored in the reception room, played a couple of games, found it dull, so I carefully selected to take out meals on an app, planning to eat with Zane later. The takeout hadn't arrived yet, but the Starbucks I ordered did. It was placed at the front desk. When I went out to get it, I ran into a tall, lanky young man. He seemed to be returning from the restroom, his hands still wet. He casually grabbed a couple of tissues from the counter, drying his hands while looking at me curiously. "Hey, new employee, which department?" The voice was very familiar. I couldn't help but stare at him. "Zyvan." He jumped. "Xiao Qiao." With our identities confirmed and given our life and death bond from gaming, we instantly became friendly. Zyvan looked longingly at the bag in my hand. "Xiao Qiao." I've never had Starbucks in my life. To thank him for carrying me ranked, I handed him a toffee nut latte. Zyvan took it a bit sheepishly. Thanks, Xiao Qiao. I have a proposal due this afternoon. I'll finish it first and come find you to play later." With that, he left, watching his retreating figure. I was surprised that a chatterbox from the game was such a clean-cut young man in real life. He looked only 2 or 3 years older than me. Just then, Zane's voice sounded leisurely behind me. "Ja." I turned to see him standing there casually in his suit, his composed aura instantly overshadowing Zyvan's youthful impulsiveness. Coincidentally, the delivery guy arrived with the clay pot rice meals I'd ordered. Zane took them, ruffled my hair, and said, "Let's go. Eat inside." Walking side by side into his office, I took out the remaining latte and handed it to Zane. He glanced at the empty paper bag. "Where's yours?" Zyvan said he'd never had Starbucks, so I gave it to him. "You met him?" Zane raised an eyebrow, then shoved the cup back into my hand. "You drink it. I never liked these anyway. I didn't think much of it. After lunch, Zane had me rest in the inner room. I went in and slept. When I woke up, it was already past 3 in the afternoon. Checking my phone, I saw a message from Zyvan. "Sent 3 minutes ago. Xiao Qiao, was that latte you gave me originally meant for Zane?" I replied offhandedly. "Yeah." "Why didn't you say so sooner?" Zyvan wailed. "Oh my god. I actually took the coffee you bought for Zane. Do you know what just happened?" We came out of the meeting. Zane walked over to my desk. I thought he was going to praise my proposal, but he just looked at the cup on my desk and said, "That was originally for me," then left. I broke out in a cold sweat. "Xiao Qiao, am I going to get fired because I stepped into the company with my left foot first or something?" I found it hilarious. "What are you thinking? Zane isn't some brain-dead CEO from a novel. You're working fine, haven't made any mistakes. Why would he fire you?" Zyvan profoundly expressed his regret. I comforted him a bit more, then hopped off the bed to find Zane. But as soon as I pushed open the restroom door, I found him standing right there, awake. I looked up at him. "Did you go tell Zyvan he drank the coffee meant for you?" "Yes." Zane took my hand and led me inside, gesturing for me to sit on the edge of the bed. He started combing through my sleep-mussed hair with his fingers. His touch was so light I felt no pulling on my scalp, only comfort. "He's terrified you'll fire him over this. He even said he'd specially buy you another one to apologize." Overthinking it, Zane smiled faintly. "Ja, I want you to make me a fresh brew." Zane rarely asked anything of me. This rare request I had to fulfill. So that evening, after dinner, I fiddled with the coffee machine at the kitchen island. Following an online tutorial, Zane leaned against the wall, holding a glass of water, watching me with amusement. I was focused on grinding coffee beans and didn't notice when he had put down the water glass and come up behind me, suddenly wrapping his arms around my waist. I stiffened, not daring to move. The aroma of coffee beans gradually filled the air, warmed by the heat. In my daze, I belatedly realized that the polite restraint Zane had shown before wasn't his whole self. At certain moments, that facade would peel away, revealing someone intensely aggressive, who wouldn't easily let me go. Like now, clutching his wrist, I asked haltingly, "Zane, are you jealous of Zyvan?" Zane's movements paused. Then he chuckled softly. "Ja, if I were you, I wouldn't mention his name right now." So he was jealous, and he claimed he didn't care about a cup of coffee. Amen. During the summer holidays, under Zane's guidance, I gradually started handling some company matters. Some overly professional contracts I only half understood, so he would break them down, explaining them bit by bit. "You'll have to face these things sooner or later. If your mom were still here, she'd be teaching you the same." Zayn was right. His patience and meticulousness in teaching me were no less than my mum's. Before she left, she had held my hand, her tone sorrowful. If I go, I'm afraid no one in the world will ever take care of you so thoroughly again, Ja. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid you'll feel alone without me. Since I was little, she always put me first, even ahead of Jean. She spoiled me. Until then, I had never imagined she would leave me so suddenly, overnight. I lost not only my mom but also my dad if Zayn hadn't appeared. I would truly be alone in this world. Every time I thought of this, I'd feel insecure and seek out Zayn, throwing myself into his arms. Zayn would always hold me close, letting me nuzzle against his chest, planting random kisses on his face, until I looked up at him with teary eyes. Ja, you go out first, he restrained himself, kissing the tip of my nose. I'll come play with you after I finish reviewing this proposal. The afternoon before yesterday, I took Zayn to the cemetery in the suburbs. It was drizzling. He held an umbrella for me while I carefully climbed the slippery steps, a large bouquet of lilies in my arms. In just 3 years, the pine tree beside the tombstone had grown lush. I placed the lilies before the tombstone, linked arms with Zayn, and bowed deeply 3 times to my mum. Mum, I have a boyfriend now. He's 9 years older than me, but he's very good. You know him too. Zayn said softly, Miss Ming, please rest assured that for the decades to come, I will take good care of Ja. The company you left her, I will help her manage. Ja will become even more outstanding than me. Just as you wish. After saying this, he proactively stepped aside to smoke, leaving the space to me alone. I stroked the tombstone, whispering many things from my heart to my mum. I told her Iris had gotten her comeuppance. Jean was now alone. He still had some residual shares in the company, and the old family home was his, so getting by wasn't a problem. Zayn was truly good to me, as meticulous and thorough as she was in caring for me, and he'd even helped me gain a few pounds. I turned 22 months ago, was an adult now, and wasn't picky about food anymore. Towards the end, I slowly crouched down, tears finally falling. I still miss you so much. Not wanting to worry Zayn, I cried by myself for a while, wiped my tears, and went to find him. When I was still a few steps away, I saw someone standing on the steps below him. As I got closer, I realized it was actually Jean. 2 months apart, he had lost weight. His demeanor lacked the previous despondency, seeming more at peace, calmer. Only when he saw me linking arms with Zayn did a look of shock and realization cross his face. After a moment of silent eye contact, he said softly to Zayn, take good care of Ja. Then he walked up the steps, turned a corner, and passed us by. I turned my head and saw the large bouquet of lilies in his arms, a corner peeking out from the crook of his left arm, raindrops still on the petals. But what was the use? The person was gone. Even if my mum were alive now, she would never forgive him. Once in the car, Zayn leaned over to fasten my seatbelt, then suddenly said, I booked tickets to Shanghai for tonight. I'll take you to Disneyland to relax. He was incredibly perceptive of my emotions, instantly detecting my low spirits. The next morning, Zayn and I went to Disneyland. It was summer holidays, so the park was mostly parents with kids. I bought a snowy Mayhead band at a shop, put a Duffy one on Zayn, and dragged him to a mirror. Do we look good? Do we match? The mirror reflected our images. I'm 172 centimeters, quite tall for a girl, but still a head shorter than him. Nestled beside him, the man had a somewhat helpless smile, but his eyes were full of indulgence. Do we look good? We match? I bought both headbands, picked out a bunch of other merchandise. Zayn carried it all for me, and we went around taking photos with the various characters. During the afternoon parade, I jumped and cheered excitedly, greeting Linabelle. Zayn followed behind, recording the whole thing on camera. That evening, we watched the fireworks display. From our hotel window, still buzzing with excitement, I turned around to see Zayn standing behind me, a rare nervousness in his expression. What's wrong with you? Before I could finish, a small red velvet box was presented to me. Inside, a pink diamond ring sparkled brilliantly under the light. It might be a bit fast, but Ja, it's fine if you don't agree this time. I can propose again later. You can agree whenever you want. His voice was low, tender. I just couldn't wait to spend the rest of my life with you. For a moment, I was dazed. Somehow, I remembered an evening last month. I had gotten half drunk, lay with my head on Zayn's lap, demanding he tell me a story, then insisting on having hot pot. We fooled around until midnight. He was exhausted, but my drunkenness had gradually faded and I felt guilty, apologizing. He just shook his head and stroked my hair. It's alright, Ja. If I get drunk someday, I'll need you to take care of me too. A simple sentence painted a clear picture of our future. In that instant, I realized how much I longed for Zayn to be by my side for the decades to come. Snapping out of my memories, I saw the disappointment flicker in Zayn's eyes. I quickly reached out, slipped the ring onto my finger myself, stood on my toes and kissed him. I'd love to.